Have you ever noticed something strange in your neighborhood? A small detail that just doesn't feel right. This is the story of a young woman named Clara and the mystery that unfolded right across her street. Every evening, like clockwork, Clara would look out her window, and every evening she would see him, an old man, sitting in a worn armchair by his window just across the way. He sat perfectly still, a silent figure in the fading light. At first, Clara didn't think much of it. Maybe he enjoyed watching the world go by, just like she did. An evening ritual, a moment of peace. That's what she told herself. But days turned into weeks. The man was always there. Same chair, same window, same unmoving posture. The seasons began to change. Autumn leaves danced on the pavement. Then winter frost coated the glass. But the old man never left. He never seemed to read a book or drink a cup of tea. He just sat. A strange, quiet stillness started to feel less like a habit and more like a warning. Clara's curiosity grew into a quiet concern. She started watching him more closely. She noticed the light in his room was always the same dim yellow glow. It never flickered, never changed. She never saw anyone else enter or leave the house. No mail carrier, no deliveries, no family visiting. It was as if the house itself was holding its breath, just like the man inside. One evening, a heavy fog rolled into the city, wrapping the streets in a thick gray blanket. Clara could barely see the house across the street, but she could still make out his shape, a faint, unmoving silhouette against the glass. A shiver ran down her spine that had nothing to do with the cold. This wasn't right. The feeling in her gut was screaming that something was terribly wrong. Her imagination started to run wild. Was he sick? Was he lonely? Or was it something much darker? She tried to distract herself. She cooked dinner. She watched a movie. She called a friend. But her eyes kept drifting back to her window, back to the ghostly figure across the street. The stillness was no longer peaceful. It was heavy, suffocating. She knew she couldn't just keep watching anymore. What if he needed help? What if no one else had noticed? With a trembling hand, she picked up her phone. She hesitated. Was she overreacting? Was she being a nosy neighbor? But the image of his constant, silent presence pushed her to make the call. She dialed the non-emergency number for the local police. "Hello," she said, her voice a little shaky. "I'd like to request a wellness check. There's a man across the street. He's been sitting in his window for weeks, and he hasn't moved." She explained the situation, trying to sound calm and rational, even though her heart was pounding. Clara watched from her window as a police car pulled up quietly to the old house. Two officers got out and walked up to the front door. They knocked, they waited, they knocked again, louder this time. There was no answer. After a few minutes, they walked around the side of the house, their flashlights cutting through the fog. They spoke into their radios. Clara held her breath, her face pressed against the cold glass of her own window. Finally, they managed to open the front door and disappeared inside. The minutes that followed felt like hours. Clara couldn't see anything, but she could feel the tension in the air. The whole neighborhood seemed silent, waiting. What were they finding in that quiet, lonely house? Then, the front door opened again. The officers came out, but they weren't alone. They were carrying something out of the house. It wasn't a person, it was a mannequin. A life-sized, incredibly realistic mannequin, dressed in old clothes and positioned perfectly in the armchair by the window. Clara gasped. A mannequin. All this time, she had been watching a mannequin. The relief was immediate and overwhelming. but it was quickly followed by a flood of questions. Why? Why would someone do that? A few days later, she learned the truth. The house had been vacant for years. The owner, who lived in another city, had placed the mannequin in the window to make it look like someone was home, hoping to scare off burglars. The man who never left the window was nothing more than a clever trick, a silent guardian made of plastic and cloth. Clara felt a strange mix of foolishness and relief. Her great mystery had a simple, logical explanation. But she also realized something important. That knot of concern she felt, that urge to make sure a stranger was okay, that was real. It was a reminder to always trust your intuition and to look out for your neighbors, even if they turn out to be mannequins. The world can be a strange place, and sometimes the most puzzling mysteries are happening right outside your own window. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this story, please give it a like and subscribe for more. We'd love to have you as part of our community. Stay curious and stay safe.